G'day trend traders, Rich here. In previous podcasts and video tutorials, Fred and I have been demonstrating how we as diversified systematic trend traders develop our trading systems and portfolios within the MetaTrader 4 environment. We both work collaboratively as a small research team where we brainstorm the trading ideas, and then I spend my hours crunching the numbers while Fred applies his skills to the programming side of the process. We then share these solutions with our members on our forum and encourage them to apply these skills and techniques themselves. Now, despite the systematic nature of all of our processes, there still was a requirement for a degree of programming skill at the design stage of the workflow process. And this meant that our members would be bound to the core trend following systems that Fred would have to program before they could proceed to the workflow process, where they could then take these core designs to their own brokers' data to develop their own diversified portfolios. But today, we're asking the question, is there a way you can achieve this without being a programmer? And thanks to some new off-the-shelf software, this is now entirely feasible. So this video will demonstrate how, without any prior programming experience, you can closely replicate our workflow processes through an off-the-shelf solution for systematic traders. Now, this is not an instructional video, but rather an overview of a possible workflow process that can be applied by a trader seeking to develop diversified systematic trend-following portfolios without coding experience. So if our members would like more information about this process, then they can request this in the forum, and then we can go deeper down into the nitty-gritty. But this process is extensive and quite time-consuming. So in this video, we'll simply be providing an overview as opposed to being an instructional video. There are numerous expert advisor builders and testers now available on the market. But until the last few years, there was no suitable solution that would tick all the boxes for me and Fred in generating robust trend following models. But thanks to some heavy-duty effort from Strategy Quant in their latest incarnation of their JavaScripted system, referred to as Strategy Quant X, or SQX, it now is possible to follow our path without direct coding experience. Now, SQX is rich with testing features, but some of it is still under development and in beta phase. However, the tools we will be using are now quite stable and bug-free. It comprises a set of inbuilt modules with the intent over time to progressively integrate all Strategy Quant products into one solution. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we will be using both Strategy Quant X and its currently separated module called Quant Analyzer. But first, we'll be using Strategy Quant X, and for this video, we'll be using the current build version 128. So, after you install Strategy Quant X, you'll be presented with the following welcome screen. On the left of the screen, you'll see the current integrated modules of the Builder, the Retester, the Optimizer, the Data Manager, the Custom Projects, and the Algo Wizard. Now, the Builder is where you create your trading strategies from scratch using either design-based logic, random generation, or genetic evolution. The Retester is where you undertake extensive robustness tests of solutions previously generated by the Builder or from templates exported from the Algo Wizard module down here. The Optimizer is where you can undertake further optimization processes and walk forward testing of your strategies, but we won't be using that feature in our process. The Data Manager is where you store your market data that is used by SQX for strategy generation and testing. The Custom Projects, where we'll be spending a lot of our time, is where you create your customized workflow processes. And finally, the Algo Wizard is where you can get creative and use simple modular methods to develop strategies from scratch with little experience in programming required. Now, before we get started, it is important to note that the workflow process used to generate divergent trend following systems for a diversified portfolio uses a different process to that used to generate convergent systems, such as mean reversion. Now, as you probably all know by now, our preferred approach targets the fat tails of the market distribution, as opposed to the leptokurtic peak of the distribution, where convergent strategies dominate. This is where divergent strategies dominate, and this is where we focus our attention in relation to our trend following models. The reason for this is a potential infinite unbounded extent of these tails, which we want to catch either long or short. And when you look at the market distribution of returns over the long term of any liquid instrument, it typically displays this non-Gaussian distribution, which lies outside of the normal distribution. Now, markets are very efficient, so the majority of their activity occurs within the zone of the normal distribution. So effectively, you're trading randomness. But they're not totally efficient, and at times they can move into the fat tails outside the normal distribution, or the market returns can occur beyond the bound in the leptokurtic peak of the distribution. The types of strategies that operate within the leptokurtic peak are predictive in nature and relying on a repeatable market condition, such as mean reversion. The strategies that rely on these fat-tailed environments tend to be price-following in nature and not predictive in intent. And in these zones, we are focusing on the divergent nature of liquid markets in periods of disequilibrium. Now, because we target the fat tails of the market distribution of returns as opposed to the leptokurtic peak of the distribution, this difference in approach significantly alters the way we undertake our workflow process and is highly specific on the nature of the tools that we want to use in SQX. So, for example, in our trend following world, Monte Carlo testing and walk forward testing are ineffective methods, and we therefore don't use them. These approaches encourage the development of systems with high trade sample sizes and linear equity curves, which simply do not apply to the reality of our divergent trading world. So in this diagram, we can see typical equity curves arising from divergent models. They reflect the characteristic that trends are few and far between and also unpredictable in nature. So these equity curves arising from an array of different trend following systems are never linear in nature. Our individual system equity curves are volatile and experience sharp lifts or step-ups in the equity curve when market conditions are favourable to trend following, and extended flat periods of equity curves or periods of slight drawdown when market conditions are unfavourable. So while our individual system equity curves are volatile in nature, when we compile hundreds of volatile individual equity streams together at the portfolio level, we seek to help to flatten this degree of volatility, but we're only referring here to downside adverse volatility. An upwardly stepped equity curve is advantageous for the compounding effect at the portfolio level. We won't go into the exact reasons now, as we have explained this to our members previously, but an upwardly stepped equity curve produces far higher long-term dollar returns once compounding effects are introduced into the portfolio. So therefore, what we want to avoid are those declining steps of an equity curve where the effects of compounding are significantly diluted. Furthermore, another significant difference to convergent trading systems is that our trade sample size per system return stream is low, attributed to the requirement that we only want to be trading during favourable market conditions. Convergent workflow processes, however, seek to validate their approach using high trade sample sizes per system at the individual system level. We don't want this. Our bread and butter arises from outliers that are few and far between and very unpredictable in nature. So the only way we can achieve a high level of trade sample size is through extensive diversification across markets using diverse ranges of trend following systems. A high trade sample size in our world for a single system introduces over-trading into our models, and that leads us to the propensity of being eaten by the whipsaw effect, which we don't want. So we increase our trade sample size at the global portfolio level once we have compiled our system return streams together, not at the individual system level. So recognising these vast differences in approach between divergent and convergent methodology, you want to spend your time understanding which tools you need to use in SQX, as there is a very high likelihood, if you use all the tools, that you will generate a curve fit solution, or at best a convergent system that does not align with your trend following preference. So we have a very different process to the more conventional approach. How will we be able to use SQX to help us out? Fortunately, the flexibility of SQX allows us to achieve this. The modules that we'll be using for our process are simply the data manager, the builder, the retester, and the custom projects function. No need to look at other modules, they simply do not apply in our trend following world. We also need to avoid the temptation to use the random strategy generation process of SQX. In our world, we eliminate the possibility of a curve fit outcome by adopting a design first approach. What this means is that even before we open up strategy Quant X, we already have a firm idea of the design for a trend following system that we want to test. Our design first approach insists that we first develop a trend following model referred to as a core design. And the core design requires that a number of essential golden rules are embedded within each possible solution. And here are the golden rules that need to be embedded in every trend following design produced by SQX. You must have a design in mind that cuts losses short and lets profit run at all times. The second rule, you must always apply stop losses to every solution that can be normalized across markets. What this means is that this solution needs to have multi-market applicability. Furthermore, you must apply trailing stops and have no profit target deployed to allow you to let profits run. And this trailing stop must also be capable of being normalized across markets. And the final golden rule is you need a method to avoid trading during the normal market churn of day-to-day market activity. We are seeking to only trade those exotic fat-tailed environments. We want to avoid those leptokurtic peaks or the noisy market environment. So we like to activate our trend following systems outside the normal day-to-day noise and mean reverting churn of the market. Because if you attempt to trade during the churn, your method will be eaten alive by many small whipsaws. Now the demonstration we'll be providing relates to a single trend following core design only. A diverse trend following portfolio comprises numerous trend following core designs, but once you understand the intent of this process, you can then easily generate many different core designs in your portfolio creation process. So we are not seeking to let SQX develop its own designs, but rather strictly limiting what the workflow process can develop variations around. It is the core design principles that prevent us from producing a curve fit result. So that is also why we do not use an optimization process in our method. Our golden rules prevent us from having to optimize our system design. Furthermore, our aim is to develop trend-following systems that have multi-market capability and respond to the fat tails that may exist in any liquid market, as opposed to a predictive solution that responds to a particular market condition, or worse still, simply is a response from a generation process that responds to noise alone. So we start with a trend-following idea and then create a core design around that principle. So let's do it. Design first, here we go. So I have a breakout system in mind that addresses the golden rules, and here is what it looks like. This example uses a multi-time frame approach to trend following, comprising a weekly chart and a daily chart. The weekly chart is used as a directional filter for the trend following system, which trades on the daily time frame. So in our weekly chart, we apply a simple moving average to the weekly data. The idea is that when price lies above the moving average, we are restricted to only trading the long breakout below on the daily time frame. And when price is below the simple moving average, we are restricted to trading the short breakout on the daily time frame below. The indicators that we'll be using on the daily time frame are the Donchian channel and an Adx indicator. The Donchian channel provides us with a breakout technique, either long or short, when price pushes the Donchian band up or price pushes the Donchian band lower, and an Adx filter which provides us with the ability to identify emerging trending conditions when the Adx filter, the Adx indicator is rising. So in this instance, where I've highlighted vertical lines in white as a potential trade entry point, we notice that on the weekly time frame, the price is above the simple moving average, which therefore means that on our daily time frame, we are looking for long trade entries only when the condition of the Donchian break is reached. In other words, the Donchian channel is pushed up, which is at this point here, and also that the ADX is rising. So at this point here, highlighted on the daily time frame, would be eligible as an entry criteria for this trend. Now, in relation to the other golden rules, such as the stop loss placement and the trailing stop placement, we apply an ATR-based stop loss placement method, and we also apply an ATR-based trailing stop method. The reason we use an ATR-based method is that it normalizes the process across any liquid market. So we could be trading cryptocurrencies, we could be trading Forex, we could be trading commodities, we could be trading a range of different liquid markets, all with this same technique, as ATR adjusts or normalizes the volatility between these different markets. And also we note that the filter that we use for the weekly trend direction filter, combined with the Donchian break technique, avoids us from trading the normal day-to-day churn of the market. So price moves have to be fairly considerable in a trending direction for us to even be interested in entering a trend following trade. This therefore means that during this short period here where price sat below the simple moving average, we'd only be looking for short entry conditions on the Donchian break, such as here or here. We'd be avoiding all of these potential long channel breaks if we weren't using this directional filter above. So okay, that's our core design sorted out. Now we want to put it through the SQX milling process. And we can see how it has observed the golden rules that are required for our method of trend following. So this is simply the first core design Over time, as your confidence builds in this process, you'll be developing many of these simple core designs that will be possible contributors to a diverse trend following portfolio. Okay, so now let's get on to SQX and see how we can take this core design principle and take it to the factory for developing many possible variations around this core design principle. But guys, I've just looked at my watch and I've realised we've come up to the 20-minute mark, and I don't want to make this a long-winded video, and it's probably best to take this in bite-sized chunks. So stay tuned for a future video on this workflow process which delves into the capabilities of SQX and generates variations around this core design principle. From that point, we then take the generated solutions that have passed all of the validation criteria into Quant Analyzer, which is our method of compiling powerful risk-adjusted portfolios at the individual market level, and then subsequently compiling those individual markets themselves into comprehensive, diverse global portfolios. So stay tuned, guys, for the next episode where we'll get further into this diversified, systematic, trend-following workflow process. So take care and have a great trading day.